call this special quorum court meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss Washington County financial matters. The prayer and the pledge is being handled by J.P. Sharon Lloyd. J.P. Lloyd.
Dear Heavenly Father, as we come before you this evening, Lord, we just thank you for the beautiful weather that you've given us, Lord. We thank you for the abundant blessings that you've given to all of us. And Lord, we just pray tonight as we go about the county business, God, that you would give us the wisdom, the grace, and the understanding to do what we need to do tonight. God, we pray for our veterans across the country, and God, we celebrate them tomorrow. And we just pray special blessings on this meeting tonight. In your sweet name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, J.P. Lloyd.
Madam Judge, if I may address, I received a notice from J.P. Eva Madison's office that she will not be here at tonight's meeting. Regrettably, she's at a speaking engagement that she committed to back in early summer before there was a committee of the whole for the budget finance, and she sends her regrets. So,
thank you very much. Thank you. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Daniel Balls. Here. Harvey Bowman. Here. Rick Cochran. Here. Robert Dennis. Here. Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Here. Sharon Lloyd. Here. Tom Lundstrom. Here. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell. Here. Gary McHenry. Here. Joe Patterson. Here. Butch Pond. Here. Bill Ussery. Here.
Quorum present. Adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? And it looks...
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Now, according to my notes, it says adopt the agenda with changes. Is there a set, Karen? No? Okay, we're fine then. Okay. Okay, very. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Next thing we have is our treasurer's report. Mr. Hill.
Oh, hello, everybody. Okay.
Good news only.
Oh, I better get up. All right, 5.1. First line general, the expenditures, $700,000 over revenues for this month. We ended the month with $10,300,000 in the bank in the general fund, and we did dip below $10 million, which psychologically was disconcerting, but that's neither here nor there. That was just. But this month, the first few days of November, we got our tax settlement is $3.7 million. So currently, we're about $13.5 million in the general fund, but. Back to October, down to 2,000, the road department. The revenue expenditures are about the same. They ended the end of the month $2 million in the bank. And the jail began with $1.1 million, ended with $800,000. They're doing well. I don't expect any more infusions to that fund from the general fund. And at the very bottom of the next page, we ended the month a grand total of, for all accounts, $33 million in the bank. 5.2, 1 cent sales tax. The good news, it was on the positive territory. It was actually our worst month since April. I'm not sure why. Maybe more people took advantage of the tax-free weekend in August. I'm not sure. But again, we're still on the positive side, and we should easily hit and surpass our 2015 projections for the sales tax. 5.3, quarter-cent jail tax. Collections were $767,000 for this month. That's a little over 2% more than last year at this same time, and for the year, we're $475,000 above 2014. 5.4, half-cent road tax. It was the best of the three. It came in at 9% over October of 2014. And that's, I don't see any, we should hit and surpass our projection on that also. Finally, 5.5, that's the insurance report. Don't have much to say on that. We began 1.741, ended 1.703, so the fund is down about $38,000 for the month of October. And that is all I have. Any questions?
Any questions for Bobby? Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Next we have is our comptroller's report. Ms. Bollinger.
.1, the second page is where you'll see the current month for October. And the changes were of the ordinances that we passed last month. And I did not bring a note on what those were, but I can get that for you. Or you can look back at what we did at the last ordinances we passed.
Cheryl, get closer to your mic, please.
And then 6.2, that is the revenue expenditure summary, and it shows the different funds, the budget amounts, the actuals, the budgeted expenditures and the actuals, and then the unappropriated balance for each fund. And that also shows, for instance, County General is 83% expended, but if you'll look over on the report on 6.3, and you go to the second page of that, it shows that it's general's expended at 86%, and that's because encumbrances are included in that. That's all I have.
Any questions for Cheryl? Thank you, Cheryl. We're coming into our appropriation ordinances. J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. 7.1 is an ordinance transferring money in the amount of $11,853 within building and grounds. Attached directly behind it is 7.2 is a letter. It is for a waste oil furnace at the food department. Do we have anybody that wants to speak to that from the road department? Oh.
I think Jennifer may be the one that we're going to have speak on that.
Okay.
Jennifer, please.
Okay. It's actually paid for out of buildings and grounds because it's technically the heat for the shop of the road department.
Okay.
And it has went out, and they said, I think in their notes, they've condemned it, and it had to be replaced.
Oh.
And they use all the waste oil from the shop to run it instead of natural gas.
Okay.
So,
All right. Attorney Zaga, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance transferring monies of $11,853 within the Buildings and Grounds budget in the general fund for 2015. Article 1, the parts and repairs line item of the Buildings and Grounds budget in the general fund is hereby reduced by the amount of $11,853 for 2015. Article 2, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $11,853 from the general fund to the capital machinery and equipment line item of the Building and Grounds budget for 2015.
Thank you, Attorney Zaga. I move to pass 7.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comments?
Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry, J.P. Bowman. You're recognized.
Thank you, Judge. I talked to Ron Wood last week about this. He said he had looked at the cost of replacing one as a new one, or repairs and so forth, or buying a remodel unit, and he said this was the absolute best option. So I'm fully supportive of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any public comment? With no further comments, Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison, Joe Maxwell,
Yes.
Gary McHenry,
Yes.
I don't know if we're going to need you again, just sit back there if we do. Thank you, Jennifer. 8.1, J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. This ordinance is to appropriate $23,000 from the general fund for the computer department. This will cover the internet bill at the county health and the extension for the remainder of the year. Attorney Zega, would you please read 8.1?
An ordinance appropriating $23,000 from the general fund to the Computer IS departmental budget for 2015, Article 1. There is hereby appropriated the amount of $23,000 from the general fund to the internet connection line item in the Computer IS departmental budget for 2015.
Thank you, Attorney Zega. John Adams, come on down. So is the price right?
Yeah, this is including for the Extension Agency and the Health Department, where we have to provide, as we talked about earlier, contractual obligation to provide their phone service. So this is for their phone service additions. We started paying that, I think it was June. So this is to cover the entire rest of the year. And there was a little increase in our internet that we talked about before. So this will get me
it's
through
kind
the
of a
end of the year.
hybrid. It's part the increase that we got and
got
part
it.
that we really didn't have that budgeted as
Right.
we made the change off of the old system.
You got it, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I move to pass 8.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? J.P. Usry.
Can you tell us about how much the increase, you said that the cost has gone up. Is there a percentage that Cox has gone up?
Yes, it was about 5%. Next year, again, remember we talked about that earlier, that we're going to have another price increase next year.
Okay, and you'd brought before us, and it did not pass here, but you brought before us that you want to put in some cables. Now, would that have any effect on this, or this price increase?
Yes. Now, it would have a price decrease if we was to be able to put in the fiber system between the north and south.
Okay. And I'm just wondering about what that would be. I mean,
We'd have to do some figures with Cox. At the time, $5,000 to $6,000 a month was their estimate. But once we're ready to do those things, then they'll get their pencil sharp.
if you could get that for us, I would really appreciate seeing that.
You bet. Be
Right,
glad
thank
to.
you.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Any public comment?
Madam-
I'm sorry, J.P. Eckie.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Mr. Adams, is this just for the phone service? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you left. Is this just for phone service for the rest of the year?
This is the internet, which includes the phone service.
Okay, this is the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, but it's just in the memorandum. Thanks. Could you just explain to me or give me a description of what you call internet? I know what my internet service is, but what is it for these departments that you're providing, just so educate me.
When we're talking about internet service for in the county and VoIP, voice over IP, phone service, those all travel over the same bandwidth link. There's just different protocols in that. At home, if you have a Cox account, for example, you could select to have your phone come in and you can even put up on your TV. That's a part of their VoIP service. With us, you have the VoIP phones, you have your internet, which would include things such as email, going out to a site, for example, to a bank site to do your transactions, and our own website for that. So that's all inclusive in that. The only thing that you'll find from a phone's exception to that should be analog lines, for example, for fire alarms, because those have to, by law, be analog, and elevator lines. And there'll be some others. I think somebody mentioned it last time we sent out an email to everybody about the additional. Some departments do have some of their own internet. That's a little wireless device, so when they travel, they can hook it into their laptop to get access wherever they're at. And one department wanted to have a little bit of money when they traveled, so if they were at a hotel, they could get it. But it should be all-inclusive, the phones, the fax, and the internet, email, and website.
And website,
Yeah.
okay. And so this amount is just for the rest of the year, for the remainder of the year?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions. Thank you.
Okay, J.P. Lloyd.
Mr. Adams, in the budget for the County Health and Extension Agency for 2016, do they pay their own internet at that time, for that budget, or are you picking that one up also?
That will be ours. So-
Totally yours. So there
Yes.
should not be an internet charge on their line items at all?
Correct. There should not be a telephone charge on their budget.
Not internet, just telephone?
Yeah, I don't think they ever had an internet,
Okay.
but we, by contract, have to provide the utilities, which includes the phone, the electricity, the water, and internet access for that. And I think some of them include cell phones as well, when we looked at that. So because of the contract, that's what we have to provide.
Well, there was much discussion on the 2016 budget over who pays what internet.
Right.
And you're telling us now that you will pick up all county health and extension,
Yes.
correct?
Now, keep in mind, too, the only exception is the collector and assessor's office, because they have two satellite offices. So if we could look at it this way, I have a main pipe out of this building. So all the departments come out of this building to get their services, except for Lincoln and Springdale and the future Razorback DVM. Those offices only use those links. That's why they pay that. The rest of it, we all share. So it only makes sense, like we do with the electricity and water bill, that we pay out of that for the internet. Does that make sense for you?
And was this from, this wasn't from June until December, was this just the months of November and December, this
Well,
23,000?
that's what I'm going to need to finish the year. We started picking up the bills for them in June.
Right.
So my budgeted estimate that we had at that time was shot because we did this in mid-year. I think most of you remember when we kind of, April, May, said, let's go ahead and do this while we could at that time. So we've been paying that bill, and this will just get us up to the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion?
Just a second.
Yeah, you're
We-
recognized.
I'm looking at this handout that we received on the departments paying internet and data line item 3023.
Okay.
The one that, I think we requested
Thank you, Cheryl.
who shares what and the costs.
Good.
And we're just looking at it just to make sure that I'm not overlooking something. They're not on there. The extension or health services are not on there?
That's correct. Now, remember, we just picked them up with the voice over IP system.
Okay.
Now, in past, they had analog voice systems. At the health department, they were getting their internet service from the state. So we have to have the health department on their own system so they can get their voice over IP, their phones.
Right.
It can't connect to the states, but that goes through the internet connection provided by Cox, that office. The county, our cooperative extension agency, is a part of the University of Arkansas. They're kind of tagged into their internet in previous. So they were able to use that. Now, with this, at their office, we had to do a similar thing, their own system for the phone systems, because we're required to support it. So that's why they wouldn't have in the past internet usage on their accounts. Make sense?
That makes sense, but
Okay.
it doesn't. Why are they left orphans now by everybody else, by the U of A and by the state, and we have to take them up?
That's a great question.
I know I ask great questions, don't I?
And the sad part is there's no real definitive answer. As I know Bernie talked up here one time, University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Agency is kind of like the stepchild to them. Nobody knows what. So when we were trying to work with them, we were trying to find somebody at the University of Arkansas that could say yay, nay, or indifferent about us putting equipment on their network. They couldn't, nobody would help us. So the only way to fulfill the contracts that we had at that time was to say, this is what we got to do. I can't go and steal somebody else's bandwidth without permission from
Certainly.
them. So that's why we had to go this route.
Well, I support the Extension Center and the Health Department and everybody else. Yes, we do. Thank you for your explanation, but
You're
I would
welcome.
like to find out why they were just discarded so easily as they were, when they're the bright future for this county, all those little 4-Hers that came out here.
You know, I'm an ex-4-H alumni as well. And that
as
is
am
one of
I.
the
And,
best
and so I
programs
just
of the
don't think
world.
it's right for
And
them
the
to.
hardest part for me, when I was trying to talk to him, I called everybody I knew and couldn't find a person that was definitive about it. I'll be glad to share some emails if you want to set up a time, come by, any of you. I'll be glad to show what we tried to discover with it. Because one gentleman, Mr. French, was really helpful. He was, I want to do it. I want to put it in for you. But he didn't have usernames and passwords for any of the devices, so he couldn't even help us, even though he wanted to. But nobody there would. And sometimes it almost seemed like they were an afterthought, the way the college was built and put in the infrastructure. So we built this part of the infrastructure here. They're over here. They got tied in a number of years ago, so it's kind of a good old boy maybe at the time. But the hard part for us is we have a contract with them that says we have to provide that. So that's why we got the system the way it is.
Well, I want to take care of the extension service. That's
Awesome.
And so next year, we will have them included on this.
It'll
as
be
far
in
as
mine, yes.
It being yours.
It won't be broke out like their own, but yes, ma'am, it'll be in mine.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? With no comment, Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Patterson. Butch Vaughn. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Eki. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry.
Ordinance adopted.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And in sincerity, if you want to come and see some of these things that we've done, please come to the office because you may have the answer that I may need to help me. But thank you.
Thank you, John. Rick, number 9.
Thank you, Judge. 9.1 is an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $7,000 for the JDC grant fund. Attorney Zaga, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $7,000 in the JDC grant fund and appropriating the amount of $7,000 from the JDC grant fund to the JDC HOFNOD budget for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby recognized additional revenue in the amount of $7,000 in the state grants revenue line item of the JDC grant fund for 2015. Article 2, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $7,000 from the JDC grant fund to the improvements other than buildings line item in the JDC HOFNOD budget for 2015.
Thank you, Attorney Zaga. Since this is recognizing revenue, we've already got the money in hand. I move to pass 9.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Carla, would you call the roll?
Joe Patterson. Butch Vaughn. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Eki. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell. Gary McHenry.
This ordinance is adopted. Number 10, J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. 10.1 is an ordinance anticipating revenue of $10,000 for the Environmental Affairs Grant Fund. Attorney Zaga, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance anticipating additional revenue of $10,000 in the Environmental Affairs Grant Fund and appropriating $10,000 from the Environmental Affairs Grant Fund to the ADEQ BMT WC 15-08 budget for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby anticipated additional revenue of $10,000 in the local grants revenue line item of the Environmental Affairs Grant Fund for 2015. Article 2, there is hereby appropriated the total amount of $10,000 from the Environmental Affairs Grant Fund to the supplies line item of the ADEQ BMT WC 15-08 budget for 2015.
Thank you, Attorney Zaga. I move to pass 10.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, J.P. Ussery.
Can somebody tell me what this is?
Renee's coming forward, Judge.
This is a grant that we received through, it comes from ADEQ and goes through Boston Mountain Solid Waste. And we received this to assist in education. It's where we have educators go to schools and talk to kids about recycling and environmental affairs.
Thank you.
Thank works.
Any other discussion? Any public comment?
Judge.
Just
I'm
one thing.
sorry.
I think educating the kids on how to recycle and what to throw away and what not to and hold their parents responsible is wonderful. So now I want to say thank you for doing a good job. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other discussion? No public comment? Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Vaughn.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry.
Yes.
This ordinance is adopted. Number 11.
Thank you, Judge. 11.1 is an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $6,000 that we've received from the state grant. Attorney Zega, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of, I'm sorry, I went one too far. An ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $6,000 in the Animal Shelter Grant Fund and appropriating the amount of $6,000 from the Animal Shelter Grant Fund to the Animal Shelter Gift Budget for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby recognized additional revenue in the amount of $6,000 in the state grants revenue line item of the Animal Shelter Grant Fund for 2015. Article 2, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $6,000 from the Animal Shelter Grant Fund to the improvements other than buildings line item in the Animal Shelter Gift Budget for 2015.
Thank you, Attorney Zega. I move to pass 11.1.
Have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion?
Judge.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
yes.
Judge. Thank you,
Judge.
Judge. Renee, do you know if they have a plan for the spending on this? Do they have a particular project in mind?
This money is general improvement fund money that came from Senator John Woods through legislation, Arkansas state legislation, and it will be used to assist in purchasing canopies. We got an original estimate. The Animal League had said that they would help with purchasing canopies, outdoor canopies.
Is that for the fenced-in kennel area?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The estimate came in really high,
Yeah.
so the Animal League said, hold on, let's wait a second. So we got the $6,000. We got another couple of estimates, and it's come in to be much more feasible. And so I think the plan is that we're going to ask the Animal League for the rest of the money to build the canopies.
Okay. Thank you.
Judge?
Yes, J.P. Bowe.
Yes, thank you, Judge. Is this part of the GIF money?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Any public comment? Carly, call the roll, please.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Vaughn.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry.
Yes.
Judge, I didn't get to speak at the first GIF one, and I just wanted to thank State Representative Micah Neal again for his help in JDC Hofnod.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 12.
Thank you, Judge. 12.1 is a longevity pay ordinance. Attorney Zega, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance establishing longevity pay for full-time employees of Washington County. Whereas for many years, employees have received longevity pay based on the number of years tenure with Washington County, and whereas this has been authorized by the Quorum Court in previous years by the adoption of budget controls for the current year budget, and whereas it is the desire of the Quorum Court that the longevity pay be removed from the budget controls and placed into an ordinance, now therefore be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1, longevity pay will be paid to all full-time employees, excluding elected officials, in December for employees of record on November 30th and effective anniversary from date of hire as of November 30th. The net pay will be based upon the following schedule: 5 to 9 years, $250; 10 to 14 years, $350; 15 to 19 years, $500; 20 to 24 years, $600; over 25 years, $750.
Thank you, Attorney Zega. Basically, this doesn't change anything in the way we're paying longevity other than making it one of our ordinances as opposed to something we discuss every year in our budget controls. I move to pass 12.1.
Okay, now, this is an ordinance that we need to place on the, there's
First
3
reading.
readings on this.
Okay. I move to suspend the rules and move to the second reading.
I have a motion and a second.
By title only. Thank
By
you.
title, okay. Title only.
Well, they have to,
Okay.
we have to have 2/3.
Let's go ahead and roll. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Essery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Abstain. Just don't know about it.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry.
The motion passed, Judge.
Okay, now we need to suspend the rules and place it on.
I haven't read it yet, Judge.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm getting ahead of the game.
An ordinance establishing longevity pay for full-time employees of Washington County.
Move to suspend the rules and place on the third and final reading by title only.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can we have some discussion?
Sure, we're open for
I
discussion now.
hate to not vote yes or no. I'd like, someone explain it to me a little bit more. We pay for how long they've been here, and yet, I'm so sorry, I've gone blank on his name. When we see the PowerPoints and we saw one person making, I know it was the sheriff's department, I remember seeing the little shotgun pattern, and that person makes way up here, and then now we pay them extra for being here for longevity. I guess I'm in a different world. I've never heard of longevity pay. So, okay.
Yeah, they
It's
have
what it
military.
is, I guess, huh? Okay, thank you.
What are you going to say, Zaga?
Well, Justice Patterson and Justice Pond were both on the court, and I think Justice Lundstrom was too when we passed this program. I don't know if Justice Harbison was or not. Sorry, but the rationale behind it, Justice Dennis, was there was a point in time where we were losing employees, especially law enforcement employees, and this was seen as a way to incentivize them to stay. And it was an across the board, and it's something we've done in budget controls, I want to say since 2002, maybe a little later than that, but and that was one of the things that y'all took out of budget controls this year and asked to bring
Ordinance.
to the court as an ordinance, as a codified ordinance, as opposed to a budget control year after year.
Any other discussion? Yes, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. I guess my only question is this endorsing this as a permanent program, or is this just for 15?
Justice Bowman, this is permanent in the sense that anything you do is permanent. In other words, what the court giveth, the court may taketh away by ordinance later.
I see. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'm ready.
Judge.
Okay, I'm sorry, J.P. Harbison.
The only thing that I would like to see this, when we ever have enough money, I would like to see those longevity, each of those sections be increased, because I think they have been in place at least 12 years that I know of. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Judge's public comment.
Oh. Any public comment on this? I'm sorry. Oh, they've only been, do we need to suspend?
I thought we had
I thought he said,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought he said third. I thought you said third.
No.
I'm sorry.
Have I read? An ordinance establishing longevity pay for full-time employees of Washington County. My apologies.
I move to pass 12.1.
I have a motion, and Karen, what's wrong?
We need to vote to suspend the rules.
Okay, I know, I can watch her face and know when something's going on.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we suspended the rules, and we need to vote on that. Okay. Is everyone in agreement? Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Usry. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell. Gary McHenry.
An ordinance establishing longevity pay for full-time employees of Washington County.
I move to pass 12.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Carly, call the roll.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Usry. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran. Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry.
I don't get this money, which is fine, but I can tell you the employees will certainly appreciate it. Thank all of you for doing this. The next thing we have is review remaining 2016 budget request, employees insurance. Cheryl, are you going to present this? Sure. I think George is available if you need him also.
In your packet, the insurance information that, not in your packet, in your blue book, the information that Nelson originally presented is what he's going with. He said those numbers are not going to change. So you had the numbers, but he was going to come back and he thought the numbers may change, but he said they're not. So the insurance was already figured into the budget. I don't know what page. Hang on, I'll see what page.
Nelson was going to be here tonight. He called. He's got the stomach bug. So if we end up needing to answer some questions to him, we can get him. But I think that we can probably answer these. I know that we're looking at making some changes. However, Blue Cross or Blue Bandage is still crunching the numbers on exactly what it's going to cost us to become ungrandfathered, to come into full compliance with the Affordable Care Act, and also how much income we can generate by a variety of premium increases, copay increases, deductible, and deductibles too. And the Blue Advantage is still crunching the numbers on that, and that's not going to be available to us until sometime after the first of the year. Open enrollment has already started. So if we decide to make some changes, we have to have a special enrollment period in the middle of 2016, or we wait and make the changes effective in 2017. I know there's been talk about a wellness program in the court, but I know we went down that road a couple of times before, and there's a cost factor with that. And we've entertained some proposals before, but if we're going to do that, we're going to need to gather some proposals and bring them to you, because there is some upfront money it takes that you've got to spend before you start seeing some savings in that.
Let me get this correct. This court has already voted on this insurance. What you're presenting tonight will not change anything. This will be the budget for 2015, and then if there are any changes, it'll have to come in the middle of next year. So this will be as you have already approved this budget. Am I not correct?
Yes, and that's on page 161.
I thought this might be a little confusing, and I just wanted you to understand this is the budget you folks are. This is the insurance you've already voted on.
It's the numbers you've already seen that he presented. He just thought that he could come back and maybe reduce some of them, but he felt like this was the numbers that we needed to go with for next year.
Yes, I'm sorry, Jake.
So since we've already voted on this, and we don't need to vote on it again, do we?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
This will be a
But
part
it's
of
Information.
just information.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe you actually voted on it when he was here, because he was going to come back and present numbers, and then you were going to look at it again. But the numbers didn't change, so you might want to tentatively vote on it.
If there's any question, I'd rather you go ahead and take another vote. J.P. Cochran.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yes, J.B. Ecke.
I'd like to know, just looking at this, is how well is this working for the county? Is this really good for you all? Has it been good in the past?
Well, absolutely. It's been good. I know that it's fixing to be not quite as good because we know that there are going to be some changes, but it has been a good benefit. At least.
Explain what changes that are.
Well, we've asked Blue Cross to look at several different scenarios for us in terms of increased premiums and increased copays and increased deductibles because of what's happening with our fund now. And they're still crunching numbers on that. We need to bring that to y'all to approve, but we don't have those numbers right now. Won't get them until sometime after the first of the year.
Okay.
Okay. And once we do that, once we make any increases, we've already done the maximum. We did it a couple of years ago, increased what we could, but retained our grandfather clause under the Affordable Care Act. But it looked like this year that it was time for us to shed that grandfather clause. But they're still crunching the numbers. Looking to see what all the different, what it's going to cost us to do all the things that we're not doing right now that we'll have to comply with, and then what sort of mix. We'll probably have more than one proposal for you to look at in terms of what sort of mix we want to do in terms of premium increases, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you.
J.B. Harbison.
I talked with Mr. Driver kind of extensively about this and asked him, were we still ahead by using the self-insured and letting Blue Cross Blue Shield, what's the term, operate it or take care of it?
They manage it.
Manage it. And he said yes. I said, well, will you tell us if it gets to a point that we need to go to an insurance person to come in and give quotes on premiums? He said right now that we're still saving anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 by doing this.
Nelson told me we could take a look at our costs right now and add about 40% to it if we went to a fully insured program.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Judge. I really wish Nelson was here this evening because I know he had talked about several suggestions that he was going to make or was going to give us some scenarios about some ways that we might want to look at how. I agree with J.P. Harbison that this is, and Nelson, this is a fantastic way for us to come out not quite so far behind on the health insurance, but I'm going to make a motion that we table this tonight until he's here to give us those illustrations and some of the things that he suggested he wanted to talk about to give us some understanding about what we could. Yes, and I see Miss Lindsay is raising her hand. Maybe she can help us with that.
I can. I've actually talked to Blue Cross this week, and part of the holdup is the numbers will not be ready till after the first of the year. So if we table this budget will not be ready till after the first of the year either. So that's the drawback. We have to take numbers that Blue Cross provides us, and it's their annual enrollment season as well, so.
Then I withdraw that motion. That makes sense.
Okay. J.P. Street.
Blue Cross is obviously dragging their feet on giving us any numbers, and my question is, will they just go up, or this is our budget, this is what we're locking into. Is there a contract with them that they will give us X number of days or before there's an increase in the price to us?
Yeah, the numbers that we're looking at, I don't know if you want to answer that.
The numbers that they're going to give us are going to prevent us with various scenarios in terms of increases in copays, deductibles, premiums, and things like that, and figuring out exactly how much money that's going to generate. And that's what we're waiting on. And they're also double checking those numbers against what exactly it is going to cost us once we lose our grandfather status under the Affordable Care Act, which we will if we increase anything at all anymore. We've done the max we can do that a couple of years ago.
But my question is, obviously there's a cost to us to manage this.
Right.
And if they come in and they say it's going to be a much higher price and they're going to start charging us more.
No, we're locked into a contract with them.
Okay, that was my question.
Then if I can elaborate on that, the numbers that we're getting, they have nothing to do with our agreement with Blue Cross. Blue Cross has got a fixed rate. We're going to pay the same amount to them regardless. What this is how can we organize our plan to bring money into the county to fund the insurance fund. Those are the numbers they're running for us because since we are self-insured, we pay the actual cost of everything we expend. Well, there's some changes that if we make them, we're going to have to open this door to losing our grandfather status, and there's a whole lot of new cost that we will have to cover that we're not currently required to cover. So what they're doing is they're evaluating with our current spending, will that be a true cost for us or will it be a savings for us still? Do we have enough people utilizing those services that when we open that door, we're really not going to see any benefit to raising their co-pays and their premiums? Because if we raise their premiums and we still get no money coming in, we've hurt ourselves. So those are the numbers we're waiting on.
And I guess what the bottom line question is, if we budget this money for next year, are we going to be able to hit that budget? That's my question.
And that's the unknown. The last 2 years, they've had to ask for money. I know that. Nelson's been here 2 years in a row.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to look at is, can we find a way to bring more money in?
I mean, that can happen. I mean, we could get hit with some major claims and we may get to a point in the fund where we don't feel comfortable and need to infuse more money. That's always a possibility. But we're also, again, of course, looking at, coming to full compliance with the Affordable Care Act and doing our what increases on copays, deductibles, like I said earlier, to that we assume right now that more out of pocket money for the employees.
So theoretically, it shouldn't change from what we're doing now. Theoretically.
Right. Theoretically.
Okay, that's my question.
Absent some major hits.
I understand. Thank you.
J.B. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. I've got do a little calculating here on our health insurance line 3170. That amount has increased by 23% from our 15 budget, and our bottom line has been increased by 19%. And I'm wondering, is this addition of employees or this Affordable Care Act that's doing all the damage here? Or that is enormous increases.
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination. We've had some major illnesses that have hit the fund, so therefore we've got to build it back up. And there is a cost. We pay $68,000 a year, I think. It's a tax we pay, which is a kind of drop in the bucket for the Affordable Care Act.
George,
annually.
Use the mic, please.
Right now. And then there's medical inflation also. I don't think it's been an increase so much in employees as it just has been an increase in claims.
So we've had major medical losses this year is what it amounts to.
Yes.
Well, I knew he talked about some large cases,
Right.
and I didn't know what that amounted to, but those are just enormous increases, and I knew the Affordable Care Act was going to impose some difficult issues there.
Right, and Lynch and I were talking about today the different things that we don't have to do right now under the Affordable Care Act. We're grandfathered in. Those will call the things that we're going to have to provide and maybe provide for free that either we're not covering at all right now or we're only picking up part of the cost. So there's still, Blue Cross is still crunching the numbers on that. Okay, this is going to come in compliance. If you're going to do increases in your copays, deductibles, and so on and so forth, then you've got to come in compliance with the rest of the Affordable Care Act, and that's going to cost you X dollars. We're pretty sure now that we are ready to shed our grandfather status, that we need to, but Blue Cross is still crunching all the numbers on that. So I don't know how much. So far, it doesn't look like to me the Affordable Care Act is impacting us that much. It certainly will impact us once we lose our grandfather status.
It is somewhat. I will say this. Most organizations are seeing anywhere from 5 to 8% in more claims every year because of the Affordable Care Act. That's not counties, that's not government, that is across the United States. Claims have just gone up. We know dependents are staying on longer. So we have dependents that can stay on the plan up to the age of 26. Well, a lot of people think, well, young dependents, a lot of times very healthy. What they don't think about is, well, pregnancies. So now the county will cover pregnancies on dependent children up to the age of 26. We've had a ton of those. Just to be honest, we've had a ton. And so we've had several catastrophic claims that are absolutely unexpected. You can't prepare for them. I'm not going to say that we've had a lot more this year than last year. I'd say maybe 1 to 2 more this year than last year. But when we're talking catastrophic claims, we're talking in that $100,000 range for their medical care. And so we have had a few of those, but a lot of this is driven by the fact that there are things now covered by Affordable Care Act, even as a grandfathered plan, that were not covered previously. We are covering more people for longer, and we have no control over that. And so is it a bad thing? Probably not. It's a great thing for our employees and those employees' dependents, but it costs something. And that's something that we're having to take into an account, and where we, to maintain this grandfather status, we haven't seen a lot of increase in premium. We haven't seen a lot of increase in co-pays. And that's something that inevitably we're going to have to look at. Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to look at that down the road and decide, okay, is it worth taking that jump and forfeiting this grandfather status, or are we going to assume so many more additional costs by forfeiting that it's a wash? And that's what we're waiting on. And so there is analysis taking place.
What are the risks of giving up the grandfather situation?
Would you like to speak to this, or we
You
have
know,
a
laundry
list?
Minja and I talked about, for one thing, we're going to have to track actual out-of-pocket costs more carefully, and it's going to include a lot more things right now. So the employers are going to reach an out-of-pocket cost much earlier, which means from that point forward, every medical service, including prescriptions, will have to pay 100%. Okay, that's one thing. We'll have to offer free vision and dental screenings for dependents. There's some experimental drugs that are going to become mandatory. Certain specialists will become primary care doctors, which right now when you go to your primary care doctor, you pay a copay. You go to a specialist, you've got to reach a deductible, and then once you reach that deductible, then we pay 80% of that. Certain medical devices are going to be free, such as breast pumps. All birth control will be free. We're actually going to have to maybe incur some costs with clinical trials, and we'll have to start paying 100% of preventative care. 2 examples of that, what is considered preventative care is colonoscopies and bone density scans. So there's a lot of things that we're going to have to pick up that at no cost to the employee to come once we lose this grandfather status.
Does the birth control include abortions?
I doubt it. I don't know that for certain. I don't know what our plan does not. Our plan right now does not cover elective abortions.
Okay.
I mean, if it was
Okay. I sure would like to have a copy of those exclusions that we'd be looking at.
Okay. Well,
so if you wouldn't mind, I'd
this
like
is just
to
scratched
email.
out. We'll get you
Okay.
something typed up.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
J.P. Harbison.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the money that he has put in the increase of the $885,950, that increase that he has in there is what he has projected, and he hopes that this is going to cover everything.
That's correct.
That's correct, because some of the people on the court may not realize that. This is his projection to cover these increases. Okay, thank you.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of questions. Is there going to be a point where we're forced to lose our grandfather status?
Well, we will if we increased anything else on the employees right now, which
But
is
is there a
premium.
time frame that
Well,
does that?
now, we've had a lot of discussion about that, and seemed like the last couple of years we were talking about, well, everybody supposedly is going to lose their grandfather status in 2017 regardless, but I don't know for a fact that that's going to happen as we approach 2017 and those who are grandfathered in start screaming bloody murder. I don't know for a fact that that's going to happen, but at one time, in our discussions with Blue Cross, it looked like that we and I'm assuming everybody else that's grandfathered in are going to lose that status in 2017. I don't know that that's a 100% guarantee that that's going to happen or not.
If it doesn't happen in 2017, is there kind of a tentative next buffered time frame that might kick in?
No. Not now.
Do you have an idea, and I know this is very difficult because all those things you just listed are really subject to the whims of the employees as to when they use it or the dependents do, but is there like a kind of a benchmark that Blue Cross and Blue Shield is talking about that we would have to raise copays and deductibles and premiums for employees to be able to offset the cost of that grandfather?
That's what they're looking at right now. They're crunching all the numbers on that right now.
Do you have a gut feeling as to what that might look like? We won't hold you. I won't hold you to that. But just to get I mean, is that going to be a 20% increase in premiums and copays and deductibles? Is that 10%? Just a rough guess.
Honestly, I don't have a real set number I can give you tonight. I can tell you this, that because of Affordable Care Act, we are still limited on how much we can raise premiums and copays and things of that nature because the plan still has to be affordable as defined by law. And so with the guidelines of Affordable Care Act, it really takes into play a percentage of what their compensation is. So we have limits that when we look at raising it, I think I will tell you this, that the area we're going to look at probably strongest if we touch premiums will be on dependents or families rather than on the employee itself, because the employee itself is what is defining affordable. And so it's going to be looking at people that are covering more lives on the plan probably that we'll have to consider. I don't have any set numbers. I really don't. I haven't done a lot of the talking with Blue Cross. I just happened to visit with them yesterday. And Nelson probably could give you some better numbers, and I know he will be back.
Well, the reason I ask that is it looks like that if we choose to lose our grandfather status, then the employees lose with higher copays and premiums. We don't really gain anything, might lose something. The only part of the system that's benefiting is someone way up the chain from us in that. So it seems like if we were looking for ways to help our employees and not punish the county too, not messing with this as long as we possibly can makes a lot of sense. And maybe the employees will appreciate almost a pay raise because they're not having to pay these additional copays, deductibles, and premiums, because that, if you're one of the ones using it, it gets extremely expensive. So I always wondered how much free health care costs. Now it looks like it's about $5 million. Thanks.
Nothing's free.
J.P. Lloyd.
Thank you, Judge. On that Obamacare tax, that ACA tax, how did they figure that, $68,000? How did that, is that each employee? I mean, because it went up from 57 in 2015.
It is the average covered lives for the year. And so each year we have to take what they call a snapshot look, or that's the method we use, of how many covered lives on average were covered by the plan for the year. And then there is a dollar multiplier that those covered lives are compared with, and we come up with that dollar amount each year.
And I think that's goes up a little bit every year. Hadn't it been going up since you first
This
started
one
paying?
has gone up the last 2 years, and it's expected to go up one more time. Originally, it was set to be a 3-year tax. We're waiting to see if that actually happens. But initially, it was supposed to be just a 3-year tax, and we're hoping this next year it goes away, but I'm just not holding my breath yet.
I don't mean to sound ignorant, but what does covered lives? What does that mean?
That would be any individual covered by the plan. So employee, employee spouse.
So you
if they're
count
covered,
each into
children. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Each. Okay. Okay.
Could you repeat that? Okay, covered lives. I didn't hear it very well. Covered lives, what's the multiplier?
It's a dollar amount, she said, but you don't know what it is.
Covered lives is the number of people. Like if, let's say I had myself and my wife, then that's 2 people.
Okay.
Not just employees, but if they've got their children and their spouse, then it's the number of
So-
covered, the number of people covered is what the fee is based on, not the number of employees, but the actual number of people covered.
Times, you don't know what that dollar
It's a
amount
moving
is?
multiplier. It changes
Okay,
every
I'll
year.
recognize
Okay.
you.
It changes that number changes every year?
Yes.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hesitate about even asking, but could you go back to the 26-year-olds being covered under these policies? Why is a 26-year-old covered? What makes them eligible to be covered?
That was part of the
Affordable Care Act. Part of the Affordable Care Act was it mandated that all employers that offer health insurance must offer coverage to dependent children up to the age of 26. And believe it or not,
Well, what makes them dependent?
as long as they are your biological or stepchild or adopted child, they are covered up to the age of 26. And even marital status doesn't change that.
Really?
Yes.
And so I know when we first talked, and that's a mandate that we weren't grandfathered on.
Yeah.
Well, my
But
insurance doesn't work this way. I pay for everything.
we thought maybe it actually may be a benefit to the plan because younger people don't
His
get
blood
sick.
pressure just went up.
But, as Lindsay said, we had pregnancies, and so.
It is a federal requirement. We don't have any option.
Jimmy Ecke.
I can ask him.
Yeah. Close your mouth.
Sorry, close my mouth. I was trying to figure out the formula for the ACA tax. And you said covered lives, which is individuals, everybody, I understand that, times what's the dollar amount for the covered lives?
I don't have it with me. It
Okay.
changes every year. I know Nelson used it to calculate, but I don't have it with me. But they have a varying amount each year.
And it's a three-year
Yes.
increase or tier program process.
That's
Supposed to be,
correct.
I didn't know that, but Lindsay said it's supposed to go away after 3 years.
Supposed to
We
go
don't know
away.
For a fact that it will.
Away.
We're on year two. That is how it was sold in the Affordable Care Act. We're hoping that happens.
It's a tax, right?
It's a tax.
It's a tax.
They didn't
Okay.
call it that initially, but that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, any other
Thank you.
discussion?
Thank you, Madam Judge.
So, I guess, I think we'll go ahead and vote on this number 13, reviewing the remaining, so, okay.
Does Blue Cross and Blue Shield realize that we're trying to pass the budget for this, and yet they know that they're not going to be ready?
Yes, I mean, they understand that, but they cannot get it all done in time for us to pass the budget.
Okay.
Let me add this. The budget as it currently is set to accommodate our plan as it currently is.
Okay.
What Blue Cross is predicting is methods to save us money so we could potentially cut this budget in the future. And so that's what Blue Cross is working on, is ways
Okay.
that we can bring more money in. Everything we have currently is correct as it currently stands, as long as we don't have just an astronomical amount of catastrophic claims.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Husby.
Okay. Are we ready for Carly to call the roll? Carly?
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry.
Somebody checking.
Huh?
It says somebody checking on Justice Dennis.
He just got mad. Okay, the next thing we have is the sheriff's law enforcement. Who's going to present this? You're recognized.
What's that?
I said you're recognized.
You recognize me?
Yeah, I recognize.
Okay. Everybody have a copy of our letter and request? What happened was, basically, we were going off of the information we were given on the state bid that was in existence. Since that time, the new state bid came out, and they came out higher. So it's going to
Sounds
cost
like
more for the
insurance.
vehicles. Huh?
Sounds like insurance, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's always nice, isn't it, when you get charged more? But at any rate, it came out quite a bit more per vehicle, actually. And the provider that had the bid last year no longer has it, and I don't know if that had something to do with the price going up or not. But at any rate, it is what it is. That's the state bid numbers. So if we're going to maintain the same number of vehicles, then it'll go up by the amounts that we've listed here.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Looking back at not being able to provide capital for the Sheriff's Department or anybody else last year, and the age of the vehicles that was given to us, I believe that it's a reasonable request, and I would move to pass the sheriff's budget with this change.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, J.P. Patterson.
Thank you, Judge. I was sitting there thinking about this. This is quite a little hit, but, you know, you cooperated with us last year, didn't buy any new vehicles, so I'm going to vote for it. So, you go ahead and give you the extra money to buy them. Because I know we have to keep the wheels rolling. I'd like to see them go by where I live. Thank you.
Well, you don't know how much I hated bringing this to you, but there's just no options. I mean, this is what the bid did, but thank you, Joe.
J.P. Lundstrom.
I just want to make the comment, I don't know how this keeps happening when we have zero inflation. See, I'm not getting a raise on my Social Security this year because we don't have any inflation. I don't need the extra money. But these vehicles went up $60,066, with one bid request.
Yeah.
But that's not inflation, I don't guess, huh?
You making a statement or asking me a question? I can't answer it. I'm not that smart.
I'm just being a smart aleck, Sheriff. Thank you.
Well, I was going to say that, but I didn't think it was appropriate.
Yes, J.P. Harbison.
He's over 26.
J.P. Harbison.
It's 24,180 more dollars, but that's still, is that correct? 24? This is an increase. Oh, per.
We've got two different
okay, I got
programs
it.
it's coming out of.
So, so it's 179. Okay. Well, you always tried to keep everything under control, and I certainly am going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who had their, J.P. Hickey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe in law enforcement, and I believe in what you're doing for Washington County, and we stand behind you. At least this one does. So I thank you for it, and I'm going to vote for this because your guys deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. Sheriff, I was amazed that you could come in with the budget you gave us this year based on adding in the vehicles. What in the world did you sacrifice to go ahead and help us that much?
What have we sacrificed? Mm-hmm. That we cut a couple of positions last budget cycle, and we had talked about bringing those back in, and it mainly deals with the courthouse. So I think that personnel-wise, I'd have to go back and look over the budget, but there weren't any major one items, but there were a lot of little items that we determined that we could do without.
Yeah.
Hey, none of this comes without sacrifice. We're not the only ones. I mean, every department is going through this. But Harvey, we're all in this together, so to speak. And I could speak on behalf of the rest of the judges group and then all the other elected officials. I think everybody's really pared down. But we're getting to the point where if we go any further, since you're on this line of discussion, it's going to be personnel for us. I can't speak for everybody else, but our operating budget is about as low as it can get.
Well, we know you've got a very large budget, and it's obvious that you've worked really hard to try to keep it under control. And I want to say thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm all for it, but at the same time, I don't get your attention that often to ask a question, and I know perhaps it's because I don't work over in Oklahoma so much now, but I am seeing so many natural gas vehicles out there. And I know gas is cheap right now, but I know it won't be for a lot longer. And so is there any way that we can convert anything over to save fuel as we go forward?
We have actually had some presentations done for us through the years, not just recently, but probably as far back as 8-9 years ago. There's a cost to retrofit, and then there's we're 24/7. Obviously, we drive around the clock, and it's the ability to find places that you can refuel at those odd hours. And there may come a time when it's more available, but right now it's not very practical for our division to do that, if that makes sense.
It does. At the same time, and I had some experience with this in life. My dad always had a truck like that, but you could switch flip a switch and switch it over to gasoline.
Yeah.
And then if you needed to have more power, you could flip the switch and have more power. And so, I don't know. I just think that the departments that have got a lot of vehicles maybe could research it and see.
Things may have changed, Robert. We have researched it, and we've done some of the research on it. It seems like the retrofitting was a big issue. There was a cost involved for each vehicle, and we've got a lot of vehicles. And then it was the accessibility. But I'm not saying it's a done deal. We'll review it again.
I guess when we buy a new one, could we could we retrofit them when we buy them? Or not buy them, retrofit, buy them that way with the natural gas?
I'm guessing we could. I don't know that they're on the state bid, though. I'd have to.
I don't think that's an option right now.
No, it would still be a retrofitted cost, I think. Right.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm seeing so many more than I used to see. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Eki.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry.
Yes.
The next thing we have is number 14. This is going to be Mr. Johansson. This is going to be discussion of the Washington County compensation for employees and elected officials for 2015. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Excuse me, I'm going to be like you and maybe lose the voice too, but we'll see. What I'd like to do is just go over the information that I was able to hand out last night so that you had a little bit of time to look at it. And what this represents is some of the questions that came up from the previous presentation where we're making a recommendation for salary adjustments for the employees as you're planning out the next year's budget. I'll just move on through. Some of these slides are going to be consistent with what was previously offered, but has some additional information, and I'll point that out. So on the slide that says average annual pay comparisons, what's different about that slide is at the lower part of the blue section, the Washington County employees, where we added the elected officials' pay. And so by adding, that increases the overall hourly rate from $17.51 to $18.68, which puts it in closer in line with the state average that you see at the top there at $18.24. We're still below the Northwest Arkansas regional average, where that's $20.39. But it definitely improves the overall amount when we include the elected officials' pay. And that was one of the requests from the previous presentation. Excuse me, on the next slide, where we're looking at how do the employees' pay stack up against the internal pay line. And this is the graph that has the green turquoise line, the orange, and the blue line. The blue line represents a picture of where we are today based on points and pay. It's where we take that line and run up right through the middle of the dots. And the next page, the question was asked, how does it change? How many employees would we have above the midpoint compared to where we are today with the 2% adjustment? So that goes from 45% to 52% above the orange line, the midpoint line. So it would definitely have an impact on moving a higher percentage of employees above the midpoint line. And then if you'll go to the next page, this was presented in the budget or in the meeting for the budget projections. And the following page, it was requested that we include Pulaski County and some of the other Class 6 counties as a comparison on pay. And when you're looking at this graph that has the additional lines, and this is going to pick up a kind of a lime green line and then two lower lines below the red line. That represents adding the additional counties. The lime green line is Pulaski County. And we'll see in the next page that we're behind them based on the comparisons by 2.2%. But for the other two lower counties, these are Class 6 counties. They're smaller and they flatten out. They don't pay as well based on the size of the county and also where they're located. But this gives you a picture of where they fall in relationship to Washington County's turquoise line, which is the average line, which is what we're wanting to do whenever we do these studies, is to see how you're doing currently against what's happening in the marketplace. If you'll turn to the next page, This represents the statistical worksheet that supports those lines, but what it says is that when we were looking at the Northwest Arkansas market, when we look at the NOARC survey, which is a combination of public and private organizations through that study, the Northwest Arkansas cities, the Department of Labor for the SMSA area, which is Washington, Benton County, and Sebastian County, in 2015, based on our current pay, we're 3.31% behind on a mean basis and 4.9%. That compares to in 2014, where we were at 1.81 and 2.8, and then in 2013, 3.24 and 4.45. The reason why we saw a decrease in that percentage is because a while back when we were trying to address the compression issue and also pay, the overall adjustment that the county made in the 2014 budget was 4.5%. And so we made up some headway between 2013 and 2014. And then I believe last year we went with 2%, and the market moved about 3%. So that's why we lost a little bit of ground between last year and this year. If you'll go to the next page, this is where you're actually seeing the information on the table from Pulaski County, Craighead County, and Saline County. And for Pulaski County, based on 109 comparisons, and when you're looking at this, what we look at is what positions for each of these entities can we compare with that compare with the county? Not all of the positions are we able to match. And so the numerical value in the titles where it shows 109 in the NOARC study, 131 in the Northwest Arkansas cities, it just means how many positions in those studies were comparable or we could compare with the county. And so based on 109 comparisons for Pulaski County, we're 2.2%. Our average internal pay is 2.2% behind Pulaski County, and to the positive for Craighead County and Saline County. And then the impact that that has when we include those three counties is we make up some distance. So where we're 3.31% behind as a mean based on the Northwest Arkansas market, when we include the other three counties, we drop down to about even or neutral, 0.26% to the negative. So about 0.25% behind the market and 1.44% on a median. So it's good to see those counties, but there's a reason why we don't include them in the study. Probably four different reasons. One, they're not in our market recruitment area, and so we're not really recruiting from those counties unless we might recruit a management type position where we're recruiting across the state. But for the rest of the positions, we typically wouldn't recruit from Pulaski, Craighead County, and Saline. Also, there's a different cost of living associated with those regions of the state. And then Craighead and Saline County are smaller counties, and they don't have as much in resources to work with, so they typically will pay less than what Washington County would pay. And then lastly, the Northwest Arkansas market is really truly different than Central Arkansas or Eastern Arkansas, and we have less unemployment. So we're really intentional about trying to make sure that we're matching up with the Northwest Arkansas market, and that's why historically we haven't included Pulaski, Craighead, and Saline County, but it does provide a frame of reference that if we were to broaden out the market reach, then you'd see that we would flatten out from an average standpoint. All right, going on to the next page. There were questions that were raised about the health insurance and looking at the cost share of how you're cost sharing with your employees, what the county picks up and what the employees pick up. And we're going to go through a series of slides where we're looking at the counties and we're also looking at the private sector. So this will give you a really good frame of reference that as you're going forward and you're thinking about, well, how are we doing with our cost share in relationship to the public sector and the private sector when we start looking at maybe in the future whether or not we have to shift some of those values or not. So on this particular slide here, the first column shows what the county's paying on a per employee basis, $411. And then in each of those boxes is based on the type of coverage. So employee only, the employees pick up $75, employee spouse $257, employee children $197, and employee family $480. And then you can see at Benton County a little bit of a difference there, where they're picking up 100% of the cost for the employee, and then they're having the employee pick up for employee spouse $114 compared to $257 for Washington County. For employee children, $114 compared to $197, and then $290 for family compared to $480. And then when we go on out to the right and look at Sebastian County, you can see that it's a little bit more in line with what Washington County is doing when it's looking at cost share. Down through the children, employee and children. When we get to the family coverage, they're at 204 compared to 480 for Washington County. So I'm highlighting that column, Washington County employees, just so that we can kind of see how we're doing compared to the cost share from a county standpoint. Now, when we look at your overall cost compared to Benton and Washington County, you can see that we're at 486 on employee-only coverage, 668 on employee spouse, and this is looking at the two columns combined, 608 for employee children, and 891 for employee plus family. That's pretty comparable to Benton County, 515, 629, 629, and 805. But when we compare it to Sebastian County, there you have a significant cost that's over and above what Washington and Benton County are paying for the overall health care expense. All right, let's go on to the next page. And from a percentage standpoint, this is really the same information. It's just based on a percentage of the cost share. So right now, your cost share when you're working with the employees, they're picking up 15% of the overall cost. For employee spouse, 38%. Employee children, 32%. I highlighted the two boxes when we're looking at employee family because in comparison to Benton County and Sebastian County, your cost share for the employees is considerably higher, where the employee is picking up quite a bit more of that cost share compared to what's happening in the marketplace. The rest of them are a little bit closer, and they're probably okay. All right, let's go on to the next slide, and this is where we're going to bring in a portion of the private sector because we're going to use the ACA survey, which is Central Arkansas. It's typically around 65 to 68 businesses that participate in that survey, and it's a combination of both public and private. And then the NOARC survey is here in Northwest Arkansas, and it's around 56 to 58 organizations. Again, you see some cities in there, you see some school districts, you also see some private sector. So it's a little bit closer to a combination of picking up private instead of just looking at public only. So on this one, on a percentage basis, again, you'll see Washington County and what that looks like, and then ACA, NOARC, and then I put the last column, the federal employees, so that we kind of use them as a frame of reference on how they're cost sharing. So an employee only, we're really pretty consistent, as you'll see with the ACA, 86.14 compared to our 85.15, NOARC 76.24, and then the federal government 75.25. And then as we move on down to employee spouse and employee children, we're actually pretty consistent, again, in those two line items. But when we get down to employee family, we're, again, higher than what's happening in the public-private sector when we go to cost share for family coverage. All right. Let's go on to the next page. And what we're doing here is just, this one is 2014. And I wanted to go ahead and bring in 2015 so we could see if there's been any difference in cost sharing as compared to 2014. Well, so what you can see with the ACA is actually there's a little bit higher cost sharing to the employees, not by much, but a little bit more going on with the ACA column, and with the NOARC, completely opposite, a little bit less going to the employees on the cost share, which is kind of strange because historically we've seen more cost share going to the employees to help cover some of that premium increase. And ACA was more in line with what's happening across the country. NOARC's a little bit different. So I'm going to say that that's a little bit more of an anomaly, that we're not expecting to see employers picking up more of the costs. We're actually asking the employees to pick up more. Let's go on to the next slide. And what this does is puts it into the monetary premium so we can kind of see how we're doing compared to the private sector on the overall cost. So again, with Washington County, $486 on the employee-only coverage overall as compared to $383, because I'm adding those two columns together, and $408 for the NOARC. So you're running about $100 to $80 above market when we look at employee-only coverage. That's going to change a little bit as we move on into employee, spouse, and children, because for spouse and employee it's $668. For ACA, the combined is $838, so almost a couple hundred more. And then for the NOARC, it's $676. So we're right in line with what's happening with the overall cost. Employee children, $608, $701, and $626. So it looks like Central Arkansas, from a cost standpoint, when we're using the organizations that reported in the ACA study, that their actual cost is running higher per month in that market than in Northwest Arkansas. And when we use public and private, we're staying pretty consistent with what's happening there, except for that last line item in the NOARC. The overall cost for employee families is $1,005 compared to the county's $891. So the reason why I wanted to offer this is so we could say, if we're looking at our self-funded plan and what we charge per month to fund that plan, how are we doing compared to the other counties, and how are we doing compared to the public and the private sector? And from a employee-only standpoint, we're a little bit higher. From an employee, spouse, and child, we're pretty close to what's happening in the NOARC in our region, not as much in Central Arkansas because it's more expensive. And then in the last one, employee family, $891 is our total charge compared to the NOARC survey, $1,005. So in general, in the market, it's almost 100, maybe 110, 115 more in the market that's being charged per month for total cost. So there may be a little bit of margin in there compared to how you would compare to the market if you were looking at cost share going forward. All right, sorry. The next to the last one here is just a comparison, and this is what was provided earlier, but just to give you a frame of reference of what the other counties and cities are planning for budget increases. And that's really anywhere from about 2 to 3%. If they have any kind of merit program, then they kind of work towards 4%. But the overall average for merit for Northwest Arkansas, based on the NOARC study, is about 3.75%. All right, and then the next page, or the last page, represents recommendations. And what we recommended earlier in the year was a 3% general increase adjustment based on being 3.31% behind the market on a mean basis and 4.45 on a median. And then the regional projected average adjustments are going to be somewhere between 2.8% to 3.6%, but the average for the market is about 3%. And then we're recommending not adjusting the range structure this year, but wait till 2017 to adjust the range structure, the minimum, midpoint, and max. Whenever we adjust the minimum, midpoint, max, there's some additional expense because we have employees that will fall below the minimum, and we have to bring them into the above the minimum. And so we're recommending that your range structure will last another year until you need to adjust it. And typically when you're adjusting the range, you're adjusting it a little bit behind what we adjust employees' pay. So range movement always moves a little bit behind the average adjustment for employees' pay. If you move them at the same rate, you'll get compression because then your new people coming in will catch up with your closer people. So range always adjusts at a slower pace than employee pay. So what we would probably recommend in 2017 is somewhere around a 2% adjustment to the range structure. All right, but not this year, or not for your budget year coming up. And then the last item was the elected officials being paid at 85% of the state allowable maximum. And then the other document is a benefits study that goes into a lot more detail than just health insurance. And this was in April of 2014, and just wanted you to have this as a frame of reference, because usually the benefits don't really change that dramatically or that much. And it went into a lot more detail about insurance, and then vacation, other benefits, retirement, flexible benefits, and other benefits, and just really as a frame of reference. My thinking is, and this has really been a point that's been brought up several times over the year, that your benefits are competitive with the marketplace. The differentiator is the retirement plan, just based on the amount of money that's going into it. That's very helpful for the folks that are probably 10, 15, or 5 to 15 years away from retirement. But for your new employee who's coming in, who's probably 30 years away from retirement, and they'd rather put money on the table, they're probably going to be a little bit more concerned about wages as opposed to retirement. And I know that it's a significant expense, and it shouldn't be considered, we shouldn't put it in a light where we would say that the benefit doesn't make a difference. It does make, the retirement benefit does make a difference because it is significant compared to what's being offered in the marketplace. And it really makes a difference for those who are getting close to retirement as opposed to the new person who's just coming in. So you have to strike that balance between attracting new people and paying them a wage that brings them in, and at the same time recognizing that we have a retirement program that's pretty lucrative compared to what's in the marketplace. Any questions that you have?
Yes, J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate all the work that you put into this. It's been very helpful. Can you help me understand a little bit on the insurance plans that you've outlined here? I know you've put the cost to the county and to the employee.
Right.
Is there any way for us, or do you have that information to actually see what those plans look like? Because I know if you've seen one insurance plan, you've seen one insurance plan.
Right.
It's kind of hard to say one insurance plan is the same as the other, as the other, as the other. So
that's true.
To make a real kind of an informed comparison, it'd be really helpful to know what
Right.
Washington County's plan, what it covers and what it actually will pay for versus the ACA or versus the NOARC, et cetera, just so we can have a good feel for how to interpret those numbers.
Yes. What I'll do is I'll get this to you. In the NOARC study, there's a couple pages where they outline the deductibles that are being offered, the copays, and it doesn't say which company, but it shows you all the line items for everything that's been offered so that you get a sense for, in general, what's being offered in those plans. It's not really segmented, but at least it gives you a good visual of what's being offered.
If you had to quantify or kind of quantify where Washington County is with our plan as opposed to, is it above, is it a better plan than the ACA comps or the NOARC comps, or is it a worse plan? Kind of how do we fall out without having to have the specifics?
Probably what I want to do is work with Lindsay to look at your specifics about copay and deductible, and then what I'll do is I'll get your, and some of this may be in this document where we're, and actually it is, but we'll bring it up current because this is 2014, because in this one you have Washington County, you have NOARC, ACA, and the federal government, but these are averages. So we're looking at average deductible, average copay based on all the respondents. And so I don't think it'd be a problem to provide you the individual pages from the NOARC study. But I probably want to look at what you're offering and make sure I'm saying that correct.
And I know that's very complicated, but that's also, I guess that's why I'm asking. It's kind of really hard it's hard to look at just the cost of the employer or the county and really understand.
Sure.
I mean, if we have a Cadillac plan and someone else has a really just a mini med type plan, that's then the cost that we might be paying, causing our employees to pay a little more, but they may be getting a phenomenally much better plan. Or it might be the other way around. We might be charging them a whole lot of money and they're getting very, very minimal coverage compared to average. So just to be able to make an informed decision on that, I think that would be very helpful.
Just kind of rule of thumb, under a grandfather plan, in general, a grandfather plan is probably a better plan from the employee's perspective as far as holding down cost. because when you get outside of the grandfather plan, you have to cover some of those other expenses. Usually, we're seeing a higher expense on the premiums for the non-grandfathered plans. And so, plus, I don't think you have, do you have high deductible? So probably right now, just because you don't have high deductible plans where the employees are going to pay a higher deductible. And then usually what that means is it's more expensive to the employees. Now, we can manage the premium a little bit better under a high deductible plan, but since you don't have that, it's probably a better plan than what's out in the marketplace, because a lot of plans are moving on to high deductible, just as a way to keep the premiums
personal
reasonable.
ownership.
Right.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
J.P. Ecke? You didn't have J.P. Cochran?
Thank you, Judge. Blair, on the adjustment for our pay grades, we've done one while I've been here on the court, and I think one was done just previous to me coming in. And we're doing it in about 4-year increments, I think is what we got. And we're doing a big chunk. And in the other 3 years, that scale is where it's at, okay? And it stays that way for a while. So every employee that comes in for the next 3 years after we do that is still at that same rate.
Right.
So we tend to, other companies are adjusting those more frequently. So would it not be wiser to take that 2.5% and divide it by 4 and do that amount every year? Okay, would be roughly 0.5%.
Right.
And if people are getting raises of 2-3%, then that 0.5% comes up and the 2-3% moves. We don't get people coming in new that are so close to the people that have been here a while.
Right.
So my pea-brain says do this every year in a very small amount, which keeps us more competitive with market on entry level and keeps us from compressing over time.
Right. So a couple thoughts. One would be that just the general rule of thumb is that most organizations will adjust pay structure about every 2 years.
Okay.
And somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2%, about every 2 years, just to stay competitive with salary inflation in the market. And then there's some organizations that put together step programs where they move, just like you're talking about, but it's probably more in the neighborhood of about 1%. Because the market is moving, salary inflation and salary adjustments are moving at about 3% overall employee pay.
Right.
Structure's moving at about 2%, but most organizations will try to let that last a little bit longer, and so they'll move about 2% every 2 years.
Okay.
So if we were going to go into something that's a little bit more regular, I'd say it would be probably more in the neighborhood of 1% on an annual basis instead of waiting every 3 years and try to do 2 to 3%.
But wouldn't that help us in our compression problem that we got into?
Yes, as long as employees' pay adjustments are tracking higher
They have
than
to
the,
track
than
higher
the
than
structure.
whatever we do in that
Right.
adjustment. I realize that.
Right.
And, all these years, we've pretty well done that.
Right.
We've been in a situation. We could always temper that pay grade structure adjustment with, temper that by what we're doing with raises and keep that kind of maybe half of what we're doing.
Right.
On an annual basis, or 2/3 of, whatever.
Yeah, so some organizations, that if they're moving structure and employee pay simultaneous at the same amount, they'll run into compression not quickly, but eventually they run into compression.
Yeah, if they're moving at the same amount, you
Right.
will. You will.
Right.
But wouldn't, just thinking of staying competitive for hiring.
Right.
By not moving it every 4 years, we kind of get behind every now and then.
That's true.
And then we jump up a little bit, and then we have to come back and pay our people a little bit more to get them off of, the new hire thing. And I kind of feel like that's not treating our people right.
Right. And that's a good point, because then you're looking at incremental expense, because whenever we move 2% on the range structure, there's an expense to bring those employees under minimum back into the first quartile.
Right. Right.
Right. And if it was a lesser amount, then it would be more incremental and not as much. It wouldn't be as significant.
If we wanted to go that way, what would you recommend, thinking this 2.5%, or would you do it at maybe half of whatever we decide to do on raises this year?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, because it's been a while.
Yeah,
So
it is.
we'd have to be.
And I think I forced you into it the last time.
Well,
Because we've been so long.
it has, and every time we try to do it, historically, we had a pushback because of the expense associated with moving the structure, and so it would get voted down. Because our role is to try to keep the structure competitive and the wages competitive, and yours is to make sure we can do it from a budget standpoint.
Right.
And so sometimes those were voted down, and so thank you for pushing it, because it was about time for it to happen, to stay competitive.
Yeah.
What I'd recommend is that in 2017, that we go with the 2%, if that's what's recommended, and then after that, implement something that's on a regular basis. So that
Annual or whatever regular
right,
basis.
I would
not
be
wait
concerned
4
that
years.
if we did a 1% and then stayed with that, we wouldn't be catching up
Right.
some of the ground we've lost.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Harbison.
Okay, on this, compression issue, you've got us for a general increase of 3%. All right, what if we do 2%? That's been under discussion. And if we did this, what is that going to do to the structure and the compression if we just do a 2% and don't do anything else? Would it be better to go on and do a 1% pay structure increase, or is that too much if we do a 2%?
Actually, what that'll do is, because if you're
It'll
moving,
bring it
actually
in.
moves your minimum closer to the other employees'
Closer to
pay.
the other.
Right.
So if we just do a 2%, then we need to leave the structure alone.
That's what I'd recommend, is that we go ahead and stay where we are with the structure so that you can put your dollars, what you have and what you're recommending,
just put it
towards employee pay adjustments. And then in 2017, when you have a better feel for the budget, would be to go ahead and do the 2% structure change, which is going to have some cost associated with it not a lot, but it'll have some cost. Typically, that's about maybe 0.5% for getting the minimum folks up to the first quartile. So there's some costs associated with that. And then at that point, we probably, again, look at somewhere in the neighborhood of 3% employee pay adjustment.
If we give a flat amount to each employee, that's going to mess up the structure, is it not? Or is it?
It does not, no. Because that's where your employees' pay is just moving within the structure.
Within the structure.
Right.
So that it really will have no effect on it.
Right, no.
Okay, what do you recommend on a 2%? 2% across the board? Or, we always want to look at the lower end.
Right.
Because if we do 2%, 2% of 25,000 is not the same as 2% for 80,000.
Right.
And we always have that discussion.
Yeah, and
Can you come up with a recommendation?
Well, and I don't know what the average has been, but let's say every 4 to 5 years, and some of you probably have some of that historical reference. I know we probably could go back and look at it, but periodically we've done that, where we've gone with a 75 cents or $1, and it made a lot more of a greater difference for the person at the lower end of the schedule than the upper part of the schedule. What we've always recommended is that you not do that successively, because then you're penalizing compensation and appropriate pay for people that are making a contribution to the county at a higher level in the structure. So I would say, again, if we're looking at a 2% or a 3%, that I would recommend the percentage as opposed to 50 cents or 75 cents, because it fits better with each person's pay. And I don't, since we did the compression, we addressed some of that issue a couple years ago. I think we worked at getting people further in the schedule, and I think that helped. Last year was a lean at 2%, and if you're looking at 2%, I think we need to try and go 2% all the way through that schedule instead of going 50 cents or 75 cents.
Well, I always remember Sheriff Helder's comments on this, because, and I feel that that's right, because the people that are actually have higher salaries have a lot more responsibilities, and usually have people working under them and that kind of thing. And it also encourages them
Right.
to stay here or to stay employed.
Now,
and if we do a flat, there's two sides to that coin.
Right. Another possibility would, and we've done this before, where from a certain threshold dollar amount, say 50,000 and above, 2%, below 50,000, 3%. And we've looked at those numbers before to see, and then that way we're not, if we were saying that we were going to use 2% as our general number, or if we were using 3%, we allocated an additional percentage for those below a certain dollar amount, and then that way they actually benefited from that higher percentage.
I also, and I don't have, I'm sure it's here somewhere, what 2% would cost and what 3%. But if I remember correctly, 2% was somewhere in the $500,000 range.
Right.
I mean, I don't remember what it exactly was.
Just as a frame of reference, if you use 2% based on the full-time employees, now this is an average because it's not saying what the 2% represents at the top of the schedule or at the bottom of the schedule. It's an average.
This is the amount of money that would go into this pay schedule.
Based on full-time employees, not part-time, it's the 2% on an average represents 35 cents per hour.
Per hour.
And 2.5% represents 44 cents, and 3% represents 53 cents. So, and again, that's just collapsing into the average. So
the cost was what for the what was the cost for the 2%? It's 500 and something thousand, but I don't remember
that's
exactly.
correct. And Cheryl's got that where she's looking at the total cost and not just the base pay.
With FOIA,
right.
everything.
When we do our
FOIA,
charts, we're typically
with all the
looking at
benefits in it.
base only.
Social Security and everything. What?
It's $563,011.93.
$11. Okay, 563,000. Huh?
With everything.
Sure. What was 3%? It's 700.
Cheryl, the figures that you just quoted, was that benefits included?
Yes.
Okay, there.
There's everything. Well, 2%.
I'm not sure I have that.
Oh, well, about 280. Yeah.
Judge, unless,
No, I'm finished.
Okay.
Bill and
JPS 3.
One thing I'd like to point out that when we're looking at the chart right here, it looks like that going along the bottom, you've got your points down here. For the person that is 1,200 points to the end of the chart, every one of those guys is below, well below the average pay. And I think we've helped the guys on the bottom, but the guys at the top, we're going to have trouble keeping those guys. I mean, some of them are significantly below. I mean, even by the time we raise them, they're significantly below. So I think we need to keep that in consideration, that those guys bring a lot to the table. And I realize that they may get a little more, but when we lose them, they leave a lot bigger hole than somebody that pushes a broom. And I'm not demeaning anybody, because we all have different responsibilities and different talents. But we do need to be cautious that we don't leave those guys out, and we end up losing people that contribute significantly. So, thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. Blair, I didn't see anything included in here about longevity pay by different organizations. Is that, I know it would be a very big percentage, but
Right.
do most organizations have long-term longevity pay or not? I don't remember.
Okay.
I know the governmental,
Right.
the counties do, but I don't know about any others.
More in the public sector and then in the private sector. So you'll typically see that with cities, counties, schools, and universities or a public environment.
The public environments.
Right.
But those numbers are not included in these calculations.
That's correct.
Okay?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ms.
by the way,
Bowman.
Blair, one other thing, I'd like to say thank you for going ahead and acknowledging the differentials here in retirement planning. I know that costs us a lot of money, and it does have an impact on people's choices about where to work. And I know it doesn't benefit the people in the early stages as like they do in the longer stages, but I think that's a significant number we need to keep in mind. Thank you.
Ms. Bollinger, did you have a comment to add?
In my blue book, and hopefully in yours, behind the tab under personnel, the very first page, I don't have a page number on mine. It has the calculations for a 2% through a 6% raise.
Oh, yeah. We have
It's not the colored page. It's a white sheet of paper. I see some of you don't have it. It may be a page you've stuck in the front of your book. I believe it was handed out after the book was passed out. So it may be one that you've just stuck in the front of your binder.
Mine's in the front of the book.
You got yours involved.
3%'s $821,491.
Okay, anyone else got discussion? J.P. Cochran.
I was kind of leaving this to see if anybody want to ask about it, but on the elected officials, we haven't done anything with their salaries in several years. You recommend leaving them at the current policy of 85%. Can you say why?
Well, I believe, based on the current biennium for the state allowable, and I need to make sure this is correct, but I think based on the information that was provided on the state allowable, that allowable went up.
Okay.
And 85% of a higher allowable actually provides an adjustment for the elected officials.
What, do you remember what that percentage would equate to?
I'll have to pull it. I don't remember. That's
You
why
just remember.
if that allowable had stayed level, I would have probably come back with a higher percentage. But since the allowable went up, I felt like 85% of the higher allowable gave a little bit more pay.
Judge, do you happen to know what percentage, or
I do not
Attorney
know.
Zaga, what percentage? Because I know they built into an automatic increase.
No,
but
I
don't
should have
recall
kept
the
up with that in
percentage.
the legislature. I
Right.
think they acted on it, but I don't know.
Okay.
I can supply it.
Okay.
I've got it in a file, I believe.
Right, that'd be great to
Okay.
see what it is and what it would be. We kind of get an idea of what we're
Cheryl,
doing for those.
do you know what the increases on the elected officials' salaries were?
It will be 3%. When they pass that, it goes up 3% every year. I don't have that with me,
Okay.
I don't think, but it could be in the personnel section. I'll look.
Yes, J.P.
3% is what I recall in my mind, but I'm fuzzy, so
Right.
I thought I'd check that.
It did go up. I didn't run the calculation
Okay.
on it, but I
So
did know.
that's why we're not seeing an increase. You're just saying stay at the same percentage of, which
Of a higher
brings it up.
maximum.
Right.
Right.
Good, good. Thank you.
It's page 225.
J.P. Lundstrom.
I brought this up at a meeting some time back, but I have a little problem with elected official salaries in that several of them are making the same money, but they have a different number of people working for them and that type of thing. And it has an effect among the working people in the county. That's why the janitors make less money than the IT people, that type of thing.
Right.
But one of my concerns is I would like to see Sheriff Helder's salary raised from possibly 85% to 90%, because he has more people working for him than any other elected official in the county. And he's confronted with all the lawsuits and other things that he is from day to day. It's a very stressful job being sheriff of a county, especially one that's getting to be the size of ours. So that's one county official, elected official, that I think needs to be making more money just based on the number of people that are working for him and that type of thing, and the responsibilities attached to the job. So I don't know if I need to make that in the form of a motion at this point in time, or we do it later when we try to finalize the budget, but that's one of my concerns. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Okay, J.P. Harbison.
Madam Judge, I think that I'm going to go on and make a motion that we do a 2% raise for the county employees this year, across the board. And I realize that the ones at the top are going to get more than the ones at the bottom. But I think that we have to look at job responsibilities, and this also will reward those at the top, and hopefully they will stay and not move on to other jobs. And of course, one thing that we have is our retirement. I mean, a lot of people stay because of that. So anyway, I'm going to make a motion that we do a 2% and that we use the money that Becky Llewellyn has provided for us to use. Thank you.
Do I have a second on that? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Okay, now we're just for discussion. Go ahead.
We've had a lot of talk about employee retention. Can you just tell me what our turnover rate for the county is compared to the other regions that we're comparing to here? Or defer to Lindsay?
I can tell you what ours is.
Okay.
Our turnover rate this year is about 8%.
Okay. Can you tell me what I don't know if there's a normal range or an expected range. Do you have kind of a good feel for, is that high, low, or?
We're in HR, we look for a rule of thumb, you never want to be over 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of the rule of thumb. You want to stay under 10. And we're at 8. So
I'm just kind of curious, I guess, where I'm going with that is how effective have we been in the past with because it sounds like we have a very benefit-rich when it comes to retirement, to health care insurance, et cetera, that it does sound like that we're above the average there. So I'm just wondering how successful we are, and if we're doing a good job of keeping those folks, then I think that's a good attaboy for what we're doing. So it'd be nice to know what that scorecard looks like compared to some other reference points that are relevant to us.
it's about 15%. He said the average is about 15.
Okay.
So
we're doing a good job already of doing what employees are apparently, by empirical observation, I guess, that we are doing a good job at keeping them happy and being competitive with them.
Yes.
Thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. Lindsay, come back here. I know because of all the confusion in the road department, we've had a lot of people leave there. Is that where a dominant part of our turnover has been, or are there other departments that have higher levels of turnover than the average?
We definitely have seen turnover in the road department this year. There's no question. They definitely have had a tremendous increase, and I think sadly it's in tenured employees. It's not in new employees. We've seen a lot of them leave that had been here quite a while. And so other departments, really, everything else has been fairly static. It hasn't really changed a lot.
Okay. So you don't know what the percentage rate is in the road department?
The last time I looked, it was around 10% this year.
Around 10, okay.
And I haven't checked it the last few days, but it was around the 10% for the marker. Last year, the road department only had about 4% turnover.
Okay, all right.
So they have definitely seen an increase.
And so no other major deviations off of that 8% from the other departments? Everything
No.
about static?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. May I ask Ann about her proposal, if that includes everybody, including elected officials, or are you just doing the non-elected?
Well, the total that was presented, I think, was just employees. Did that include elected officials, Cheryl? No, it didn't. So,
Okay.
you know,
Thank you. That's my clarification.
Judge,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Zink.
for purposes of clarity in the motion, I think it'd probably be best if Justice Harbis's motion said that. county employees, the way it's stated right now, would be broad enough conceivably to include elected officials. I had that same question.
Do,
Yes,
ha-
go
have a-
ahead.
do we have a cost of the 2% for elected officials? How much that would be?
They're already getting a 3.
No, they're not getting that.
Legislation passed.
No, it doesn't matter. We have to pass it.
Well, I've got J.P. Dennis.
Yeah.
J.P. Dennis? Okay, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess because we have a tendency to always state why we're going to vote for or against, I will tell you that I'm voting no against this, not because I don't want to raise for the employees, but I just do not like percentage raises. I think it's totally unfair. I don't think it's the right way to go. It takes more work to do it the other way on someone's part, but I'll vote no because I think a percentage is wrong. Thank you.
J.P. Esri.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just thought that they get 85% of the rate that the state elected officials, so they automatically will get a 3% raise. Is that not correct?
Cheryl, is that true? No.
No,
Karen
I
says
mean,
no.
you vote on it, so if you give them, if you say to keep their salary 85%, yes, they would get a 3% raise. That's true, but it's not automatic. It would be something that you would have to vote on.
We have to vote on that.
Okay, and then I have a second question. I know this is going to be really popular, and I'm here because I am popular, but I would like for us to review for the incoming people, for the elected officials. I noticed that we're way head and shoulders against everybody on a lot of the offices, and some of the offices that are smaller offices, I think maybe we should look at making them like 80% instead of 85% of the total. And that would apply to incoming people, wouldn't apply to the current people. But I just think in the future, I think that's something that, and I hate to even say this, but we're leaving money laying on the table if we're paying considerably more than all the counties around us to manage a lot fewer people. And I know that's not a real popular thing to say, but just looking at the numbers here, that for example, the county collector, we pay $91,000, and Pulaski, Benton, and Sebastian County are in the low 80s. And so I think if we move that, my suggestion, I'd like for us to at least consider moving that to 80% for the smaller offices for the elected officials coming in, not the current people, but the people coming in the future. I'd just like for us to consider that. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, J.P. Harbison.
Okay, I think, that I understand where J.P. Dennis is coming from, but I think 2% is all we can afford to give this year, and I think that it's best just to give it across the board, because you get into other problems of compression and with the range and the structure of the salary, and it's just, I guess, easier to do that, and it prevents problems down the road that we are, and usually when we have problems, that means we have to have more money to take care of those problems. So that's why I'm recommending this, not because I don't think that people at the lower end of the salaries shouldn't have good raises. It comes down to responsibility, and those people at the higher end, when you read their job descriptions, go through and read their job descriptions and see what they're responsible for. They are responsible for a lot more items and a lot more things than people that are, making $10 an hour or so. I would encourage us to go on and do this. We have the money, and we need to use good common sense. with this budget, and we need to move on and get it passed. Thank you.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. Common sense says $10.76 at 2% is equal to 21.5 cents an hour increase. $750 for a longevity pay for anybody that's been here for 9 years is equal to 36 cents an hour. That's common sense. The people at the bottom on a 2%, I won't use the word that's correct, but in the dictionary it would say unfair. It's just not fair. If I'm a new employee and I'm out there at night grading snow or pushing snow, I'm being pretty responsible. And, you know, I understand the definition of, job descriptions. I think I said it one night and I'll say it again. I've been at the top and now I'm at the bottom. And when I was at the top, I loved a 2% raise. But when you're at the bottom, 2% is nothing. Just near nothing, 21 cents an hour. Thank you.
Now, we have a motion on the floor, do we not?
Yes.
And we have a second on the floor. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I'm sorry.
Ms. Judge, thank you. I know it's tight, and 2% doesn't refill our people's gas tank. Their gas tanks are running on fumes in one sense. I know the government says we've had 0% inflation. I'm sorry, I shop at the grocery store. I have to disagree. Most of where our people that are working for us, 2% isn't going to cut it. I move to amend the motion to make it 3%. I understand that's more money. I also understand that our most valuable asset in this county is our employees. We've got to take care of them or we lose them. And the ones that we're going to lose are going to be the ones at the top, as other JPs have commented. Then we lose our leadership. And when we lose that, it takes a long time to build that back up. We get behind the game.
Restate your percentage.
My percentage is 3% for the raise.
So is that an amendment to?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I'm
Your Honor.
sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
I will,
Accept that as a friendly amendment?
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, now who's seconding that?
Daniel did, Judge.
Okay, and you will accept it? Okay. So now we have a motion on the floor with a friendly amendment. So now first we've got to vote on the amendment.
No.
No?
You don't, Judge. It's a friendly. And
Okay, so we're okay.
I didn't,
Daniel.
Justice Balls, did you accept that as a friendly? Thank you.
Okay. Then I guess we're ready for roll call. Carla?
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
No.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
No.
Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
No.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
No.
Gary McHenry.
It failed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now,
Can I make my motion then?
okay. Okay. You recognize J.P. Lundstrom.
I didn't know we were making motions on this tonight, but since J.P. Harbison's motion failed, we'll see how mine does. I'm going to make a motion that we increase Sheriff Helder's pay to 90% of his range.
Have a motion, second. Do we have any discussion? Carla, would you, I'm sorry, J.P. Max.
Can you just give us a number on that?
Madam Judge, may I ask Mr.
We're in the discussion. Yes, you may ask a
May
question.
I ask Mr. Lundstrom a question?
Yes.
Where's the money coming from?
Now the same budget all this other money's coming from. That money that the county clerk is so generously offering is not her money, it's taxpayer money and belongs to Washington County. It's no different than all the other money in this budget. It's county money. Thank you.
Harbison. Go ahead.
It's her money, and she has said that she would give it for county employees' raises. You are correct. It is taxpayers' money, but it's money that we have asked for raises, and so I came with a proposal for increases, and I came with a plan where the money was going to come from. So.
Okay, I am going to make a statement, and I'm going to give the gavel up on this statement. I am the chief administrator of this county. If there are major decisions and final rules, I have to make those decisions. If we have a health issue and it is a disaster, I have to make the motion on who lives or who dies when it comes to being able to take medication or whatever. I feel like that my position in this county, and I'm certainly not belittling the sheriff's role in this, but I am saying I am the chief administrator of this county, and all the responsibility falls on me other than the sheriff's budget. And I feel like this is a slap in my face because I am a female, and I feel like that I have been backhanded because I am the county judge, and I take a great offense to this. Now, where do we stand? J.P. Lundstrom?
I'm sorry that you're taking offense deeply, but my decision to do this is based on the number of people basically that's in the department. It has nothing to do with your gender or anything. And this is going to be your last year as judge. If you were going to continue on as he plans to continue on, I would have taken a different view of that as well. But I think with the responsibility in his office and number of people he manages, that's my position. The people will either vote yes or they'll vote no. That's the idea of having a motion and a second. We'll see what the position of the entire court is. Thank you, Judge.
Any other discussion? J.P. Maxwell.
It would be, the salary would be $106,631.10, and the benefits would be $12,955.67.
Can you tell me what those are currently? I know I have those, but I don't have them in front of me.
The sheriff's current salary is $96,825.
And we have other discussion. J.P. Harbison.
I'm sorry that this is getting into personalities. If we had the money, I would get everybody a 10% raise. We don't have the money. And Sheriff Helder is an excellent sheriff. I mean, his budget only increased not quite $100,000 with the increase in cars. But I can't point out, the county judge has over 80 employees. She has almost as many employees as the sheriff does. And I know, and I support Sheriff Helder 100%, but I cannot vote for this. If we could come up, because I think it's pointing out one elected official over another elected official. And I don't think, we've got the prosecutor sitting back there, and we've got, the treasurer and circuit clerk, and all of these guys do really good jobs. We've got a lot of really good elected officials in this county. And I just don't want, and they all work hard at what they do. And at this point, I can't support this. If we could come up somewhere where the money was going to come from, then I might be more supportive. But I will not point one elected official out and give them a raise over all of the other elected officials in this county. Thank you.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Tom, well, I think it's a good idea. I do like taking the person out of it and saying just the title. I agree with that. So I would like to amend your motion to include the judge of Washington County as well.
Second.
Okay.
Justice Lundstrom, well, Judge, the question would be, does Justice Lundstrom accept that?
Do you accept that as a friendly motion?
If that's what the court wants, I accept it.
Do I have a friendly second?
We'll see how they're.
Who was the second?
Joe, will you accept that as a friendly amendment? Will you accept it as a friendly amendment? Okay. Any other discussion? Yes.
I don't know where this is appropriate, but Madam Judge, I move to table this whole discussion where it's not so emotional. We all have time to consider and evaluate and look at the budget, as J.P. Harbison said and as others have said. And I am proud of this county. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of Sheriff Helder and all the others, Mr. Sylvester and Bobby Hill, all of them. And I think we need to take a step back and look at this and do what is right and good for the whole. So I move, Madam Judge, to table this discussion where we can just look at this and make an objective decision.
Second.
Thank you.
Just a moment. I've got to get.
Judge, that is a precedential motion, and it does not have discussion, so it needs to be voted on now.
Carla, would you call the roll?
Joe?
The motion before the body is Justice Ecky's motion to table the main motion, which is now to raise the sheriff and judge's salary to 90% of the statutory maximum. So you're voting to table that motion.
Carly?
Joe Patterson?
Yes.
Butch Pond?
Yes.
Bill Ussery?
Yes.
Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
No.
Lisa Ecke?
Yes.
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
No.
Eva Madison? Sue Madison? Joe Maxwell?
Yes.
Gary McHenry?
Yes.
11-2, it's tabled.
We have any other discussion on Mr. Johansson's presentation for the evening? Okay. Number 15, finalization of the 2016 budget controls. If you folks will go back to page 15.1 and look at section 7 dealing with salaries. So if no decisions made on this, then we will leave. But now this has been tabled about 3 or 4 times. So we do need for you to look at this, and we need to try to possibly go ahead and pass these tonight if we can. Steve, you take this for me, please.
Yes, Judge. You have you sort of well, you didn't act on Section 7. I don't know what the court's pleasure is if you're going to revisit salaries or compensation at all at some later date. That sort of bleeds into agenda item 16. But you could conceivably act on budget control 2 with the changes that have been outlined in that tonight. And so, Judge, I think that that's been discussed. I don't know if the court has any more that they want to do with that budget control or not.
Yes. J. Lloyd, go ahead.
I make a motion that we adopt the second, number 2, finalize section 2.
I have a motion to adopt the line item number 2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ann? Okay.
Your mic's not on, Justice Harbison.
Transfers going into and out of the capital outlay category shall not exceed $5,000 per year in the general fund, excluding the county judge emergency budget. Any transfers exceeding this amount will require approval of the quorum court. What does that mean?
That's, well, this
Go
is
ahead.
not, and as I understand it, this is not a change. I want to be sure about this. I was not here in previous years. This is not a change from last year's budget control. Is that
Only what's in yellow is changed.
right, Karen?
The underlined part is new for that section. We took out the section on the emergency budget was in a.
That's right.
You know,
So-
so it's new for here, but it's.
Justice
okay.
Harbison, you're
I
doing
just
business
want-
that way right now.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Yes, J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Judge. Maybe Sheriff would help us out. My one concern with this second portion of this is just, I don't have any immediate concerns. I want to make sure that we don't have an unintended consequence here that I'm assuming utilities covers internet, covers a lot of other things. I just want to make sure we're not cutting some department out that we currently share cost, or one department like grounds and maintenance. I know we've addressed them here, but they pay for a lot of things for a lot of folks. I just want to make sure we don't unintentionally hamstring someone that, or hamstring a process that we're already doing business that way. Do you know of any departments that do not fall under this utilities, cleaning, and maintenance services umbrellas that currently are already paying for cost for some other department?
That's a great question. Of course, the IT department has servers that, provide services for all of us. And for instance, my department and HR and the IT department, we all, at the end of the year, look at our budgets and we put part of that cost back to all the other budgets that we support to recoup part of the cost to county general for ours. I'm not really sure what this would do to the way we currently do business, because I'm not sure exactly how all departments handle every situation. I could see maybe Juliet might have some, because you share costs with other departments, don't you?
Hey, come take a mic, Juliet. Come take a mic, please.
Y'all put in this sentence that says it doesn't apply to departments who work together on cost-sharing projects. So, I mean, I think that's meant to cover it. To me, that's kind of nebulous wording. But if we can construe it to continue what we're doing, I mean, I guess that's fine for us. I had a question, Cheryl, for you. On the utilities, does that cover like the rent and utilities for those of us that are in the road department building?
Juliet, hang on just a minute. You still have the floor.
Oh, sorry.
J.P. Maxwell.
Go
No,
ahead.
hang on.
I'll let you do that. That's fine. I don't mind to wait.
Okay, go ahead. I'm
The
sorry.
utilities for any department that's down there that's not road is recouped back to the road department for county general, because the only money everything that money's spent in road department has to be for road purposes. So we do calculate utilities for your department and environmental affairs, and that is transferred over to road from general at the end of the year.
I knew it was utilities. I didn't know if it was like rent.
No, we don't charge, no, rent's charged. It's just the actual cost to the road department for utilities for your offices.
Okay.
I think that was accidentally used to be worded as rent, but it really wasn't. It was utilities.
I think there was like a line item that said rent and utilities, and I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah.
But that's calculated on square footage
Yes,
of our
yes.
offices.
Yep.
That's the only question.
Thank you, Juliet. J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not opposed at all to I think the cleaner accounting that this is attempting to do. And I know we've tabled this once before, but I really think that this section probably should be tabled, because I'm thinking of things like security cameras for the sheriff's building. If IT purchases them and takes them down there, if that's an IT and expense, how does that work? Are we going to be tripping up something that we're doing now that makes good business sense? Are we going to be putting a roadblock in someone's way to do this? I just think maybe this needs 2 or 3 heads getting around and trying to make sure this is worded correctly with someone like you that knows what things have been expended before, so that we're not creating more difficulty than we're eliminating problems.
I don't think so, because I think that would still, and Jennifer can answer this, would still be under the fixed assets and tracked as part of IT. I mean, I don't know if it'd be fixed assets, but in the inventory, would it not still be tracked as IT if IT purchased them? No matter what building they go to? Yeah, security. Well, that's what I said, but they're still going to be on our inventory. Yeah, and so it will stay under. It's still their responsibility. So I really I can't think of any other offices. Juliet's was one of the ones I was thinking of.
Well, if you can't think of any expenses that this would come into conflict with, then
I can't think of any.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second to adopt this 2 line items. Is correct, J.P. Lloyd? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Call the roll, Carly.
Joe Patterson. Yes. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Essery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran.
Abstain.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry.
This passes. Okay,
Item
thank
two.
you.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Just
J.P. Cochran.
section 2.
Just section 2.
Thank you, Judge. Something I'd like to have us consider adding, we had it a few years ago, and it fell off again. The employees that are at the top of their pay scale or above, and we do have some, still continue to receive a raise. Where I'm at in my employ, it is possible to receive additional money for your compensation for the year if you're at what they call a red line, which is your top of your range. What they do is pay you at the end of the year or near the end of the year for, if we give a 2% raise, 3% raise, or whatever it is, it comes as one amount at the end of the year. It doesn't raise your salary, so it would be considered like a bonus for our pay structure. It would allow the person to receive extra money, similar to our longevity pay in a way, and would not continue to raise them outside of their range. And the reason this is troubling to me is because the range is set based on a point scale of what the job is, what the qualifications and what the merits of the person in that job are. So if we got somebody that's above that scale, however they got there, I'm not worried about that, but we should not continue moving them up because the job itself is worth this much money per JSAP. So I throw that as a consideration, that it should be something we continue to keep in budget controls, but I don't want to deny the person of the amount of the raise and just give it to them at the end of the year as a bonus. I realize that costs us a little bit more because we, in our bonus structure, we pay for the employees' portion of those FICA, FUTA, SUTA expenses. But I think that's more fair to our Chase App rules and our scale. So I would make a motion that we implement a process like that.
JP, Attorney Zaga?
I'm waiting for something, Judge.
Yeah, there's nobody's seconding, so. Put it in shorter words.
Is that number 7?
Well, it would be an additional one. You know, it'd be number 9, or wherever you want to slide it in at. So you would, for employees at or above the range of their scale, I don't know, do we have a particular name for the scale? Maximum pay line, okay. Employees at or above the maximum of their pay line for their grade, they are to receive a bonus at the, say, the first pay period of December? Is that when we do our Cheryl, is that when we do our longevity bonuses? Same pay period then, while we're doing that. Give them a bonus in the amount of the raise given to the general population, okay? So that doesn't raise their pay, but it gives them an increment over. So the 2% raise or 3% raise, whatever, becomes a bonus for them, and their pay scale stays where it's at. Now, if the pay scale, okay, just to explain that, if the pay scale range goes up and then they're below that, well, they'd be eligible to do a raise, and they would move on up. And if we had a situation where somebody could only move up so much, we could pay them that difference at the end of the year. I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on you, but it's not going to be too many people that hit that one.
That's true. Okay, do you have a comment?
No, I'd like to make sure I understand Justice Cochran's motion. Employees at or above the maximum of their pay line shall receive a bonus in an amount equal to the percentage raise received by other county employees in the first pay period of December of each year.
True.
Is that a fair statement
Yes,
of
sir.
the motion? Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
And now, what are we doing? Putting this in budget controls?
That's a motion to add that
Yes,
as number
add that
9.
as number 9 in our budget controls.
Okay, now, I've got 2 or 3 people here I need to recognize.
Wait, you don't have a,
Okay, go ahead.
that.
Okay, now, I had J.P. Harbison.
Well, I was going to ask Mr. Johansson for his comments on that.
Yeah, usually this is hand in hand with the decision made on the percentage adjustment for the general increase, because it shouldn't preempt, because you're trying to tie it in with whatever the decision is on the percentage increase, employee percentage increase. So historically, those are hand in hand and made at the same time. So then that way you know what amount that's going to be for those that are over the maximum and would receive that allocation as a bonus that's not added to their base. Okay, and we're totally in support of that, because what we're trying to do is make sure that we're not raising people's base salaries above the maximum, 120% of the midpoint, which is significantly higher than market.
But that also allows them to enjoy a bonus similar to a longevity, because they obviously have been there a long time.
Right.
Okay, for them to move up to the top of their pay scale. For whatever reason they don't move out of that position, shouldn't deny them, and that's what we do at the hospital.
Right.
Any nurse or position that's been there a long time, they hit the top, they hit a red line.
Right.
And when you're at red line, basically that percentage is given to you at the end of the year. It'd be like a bonus.
Right.
And next year, if a 1% raise or 2% raise or whatever comes along, you're still at your red line because they haven't moved that, you'd do it again. But it would be a one-time thing, not changing your base pay.
That's correct. And that is an acceptable policy, and one that has gained a greater popularity of rewarding people for their contribution and yet not allowing them to get over the maximum.
Okay, now, I've got J.P. Harbison.
I support that concept, but I'm going to make a motion that we table it until we decide what kind of raise, if any, that we're going to give. Because if we're not given a raise, then it's mute. So I make a motion to table this, to table.
I have a motion and a second to table, which takes precedence over anything else, so. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and, J.P. Becky, I'm going to recognize you.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I'm
sorry.
You can't, Judge.
I
You
can't.
have to vote on this
Okay,
now.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We have to vote. Okay, call the roll on the table.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
No.
Robert Dennis.
No.
Lisa Eki.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry.
9 to 4. The table is, it has been. Okay.
May I make a comment, though? Not about the issue, but just a comment?
Yes, go ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Judge. My comment is, when numbers or ideas or proposals or solutions are being made to us, it's a lot easier if you put it down in writing and give us an opportunity to look at it and digest it and process it however way our thinking method is. Some people can rattle off numbers like my brilliant colleague over here, Mr. Cochran, but I am not getting this at all. And there's people who can just tell me all about bulls and feed and whatnot, and I'm going, okay, I take your word for it, madam. So in the future, if we could just put it down in writing in the proposal, that way at least we can see it and have a good discussion, and we're better able to have an educated decision. I would ask that as a please. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Lloyd, do you still want to be recognized?
My thing was going to be the same as hers. I was
Okay.
wanting to table.
May
Okay.
I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm going to make a suggestion. It's not a motion, but it is a suggestion. At our next meeting, that we finalize the budget, period. Thank you.
We're going to need about a 5-minute break. We need a visit here for just a second, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we are down to item 16, discussion of the 2016 budget finalization. We do not have enough stuff tonight, not knowing how we're going to handle salaries, not know how. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put this on hold until the next meeting. We will be meeting Monday night and Tuesday if we don't get everything done Monday. So I am going to just bypass this for tonight, and we're going to go ahead and proceed later on Monday. I am going to ask for citizens' comments. Yes.
You sort of did that tonight, Mr. Justice Maxwell, by not voting for the 2% or the 3% raise, but you have not necessarily, I don't know that the court has spoken finally on that, and I think that's part of the reason that you don't have enough information with which to operate to make a big informed decision on the budget.
So I guess we'll be able to work on that then on Monday night if we work that again. Jay, did you, no, okay. But like I say, I am going to ask that we go bypass 16 for tonight because we do not have enough information to discuss this. And now I'm going to ask for citizens' comments. I'm going to ask a motion to adjourn. And a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.